Hi, Tom. Hey, Tom.
Hey. All right. So Ariel is going to be our last speaker of the day, and he's going to talk
Woohoo.
about a very important topic: wanting more downloads. Ariel has been, I think, a staple since the first item, or
Second.
was it the second? Okay, yeah,
I think the second. 2010, 11, one of
yeah,
the two.
yeah.
I don't remember
2010, yeah.
anymore. San Jose.
But anyways, and since he'll probably plug his service, but he won't say how good it is. I have been a member of App Figures for our client customer of App Figures for days, and have sold many of people to join it. It's the best tool that you can have if you put apps on the App Store. If you're a dev who doesn't do that, I'm not sure it'll be much for you. But if you have your own apps, it's an invaluable tool. So with that, take it away.
All right. Thank you, Tom. It's so nice to present here. Like Tom was saying, I've been here for many, many years, and I really like it. I think this is one of my favorite conferences. I imagine many of you can say the same. So normally I talk about the business side of things. I love to talk about the business side of things. I am a developer. I am a designer at this point, but I think about how do we turn apps into successful apps, and that means running a business around the app. So today I have a pretty interesting talk. This is a brand new thing. I've never done this before, but instead of talking about one way of looking at your app as a business, I'm going to talk about three. Three. So before we jump into slides, I do have slides. For those of you who don't know who I am, normally I would say this in a crowd and ask you to raise your hand if you know who I am, but I can't really see you. So that's kind of different. For those of you who don't know who I am, my name is Ariel, and I'm the co-founder and CEO of AppFigures. AppFigures is a reporting platform. We started as a reporting and analytics platform where you can combine all of your different data sets for your app together. So your revenue, your subscription data, your downloads, all of that, with all of your app store metrics. So your reviews, your ratings, you can reply to reviews, you can see your ranks. You get notifications when you're featured. We actually know when you're going to be app of the day ahead of time. And you can do all of that on our platform. And we've also, over the last few years, added tools for App Store optimization so you can promote your app and get more downloads. And also competitor intelligence tools so you can see what other people are doing. And that has allowed us, one, to see a lot of information about the App Store and to get a much better idea of what's going on. And I've been doing this since 2009. So we just closed on 11 years. So there's a lot of wisdom in here that I like to talk about. I publish guides on how to do a lot of these things, whether it's monitoring your apps. I just did a guide on subscription KPIs. I have a newsletter with the news about apps in the App Store. So it's all data oriented. So everything that's happening with between Epic and Apple, I shared some data about it last week. If you're on the newsletter, you probably saw it. And I think it's time for slides. Usually I run out of time. Hopefully this is not going to be the case. So let's get started. My talk today is about getting downloads. I have a few suggestions for you, maybe even a secret for how you can get more downloads for your app on the App Store. I geared it mostly towards the Apple App Store. Most of these apply directly to Google as well. But I know a lot of you are iOS developers because it's iDev. I think there was a different conference for Android not too long ago. So let's jump into it. There are downloads in the App Store. I don't think you need me to tell you that. And now more than ever, there are just crazy number of downloads across different categories. I'm sure you've heard of Zoom getting millions and millions of downloads, and other apps in business categories, in the education categories, and other categories getting downloads because everyone is kind of stuck at home. I mean, we're doing this. We're not outside. We're not enjoying our time away from our phones. So we're even more glued to our phones. And so if there is a time to promote your app, it's now. There's a way and you can write it. And a good way to see it is using a tool that we created, which we call the mobile download index. And what we do with that is we collect the number of downloads across the apps at the top of every category, and we plot them as an index, meaning as a percentage over time, comparing them to a point in the past. In this slide that you're looking at now, you see three of the highest growth categories on the App Store in the US this lockdown season. That's a thing. And so you're seeing three charts. All of them start in January 1st, 2019. And you can see how the lockdown changed those categories completely. So business has grown by just an ungodly amount of downloads. education the same, entertainment the same. So if you have an app in any of these categories, you may have seen a bump in downloads already. And with a little bit more promotion, you can actually even increase it even more. So more demand equals more opportunity, and you really have to promote. If you don't want to, now is the time. You kind of have to. Otherwise, you're leaving a lot of good money on the table. Now, not all categories are actually the same. So you have categories like music, where they've been in kind of a slow decline. You have categories like travel that have been in a huge decline and are slowly trying to come back. And then you have categories like games that went up and go down and are going up and are going down. And it doesn't mean that people are not using games on their phones. It just means that they've downloaded games and now they're just using them. So they're not necessarily going back to the store to get another game. They're stuck with not Fortnite anymore, but something else, probably PUBG. Less demand, less opportunity. And again, you must promote, because if you're not promoting your app right now, you're going to suffer even more because the category is going down. And so at the end of the day, there's really no reason not to promote. It kind of has to happen. So the next thing you have to ask yourself is, if you're trying to find more downloads, is, are there downloads? And the way I look at it is, do enough people want my type of app? So as an example, I looked for a photo editor. And let's say I want to build a photo editor. I can easily come in here. This is our inspector report. And I can see which apps rank well for that keyword, and also how many downloads they have based on our estimates. So if I am looking at a photo editor, I know that I can expect somewhere between 155,000 downloads to 800,000 downloads if I promote, if I do my job well. But that tells me that there is demand. 1 million people looked at downloaded PixArt in the last month in the US on the App Store. You add up all the rest, we're looking at several million people who are continuing to download these apps. So if I come into the market with a photo editor, if I do my job right, I will likely get some of those. And over time, I can grow it more and more and more. So there is a market for photo editors. Obviously, photo editors make a lot of sense because Instagram is pretty big and everyone wants to be an Instagram celebrity these days. But you can do that. You should do that for every category or every type of app that you're working on. Ideally, you would do this before you start developing an app, but it doesn't really matter, because even as you're developing an app, you can set an expectation for what kind of downloads you can get. And so when you say, I want to get more downloads, and you know that your category has 1 million downloads, that's kind of your high limit. If your category has 20,000 downloads at the top, that's a different limit. It doesn't mean that it's bad, but at least you know what you can expect. So checklist so far. We need to understand the market. We can use the mobile download index, check. We need enough downloads. We know how to look that up as well, check. The last ingredient is a really good app. That's a topic for a whole new session, probably even multiple sessions. I actually think I did a session on a really good app in the past, so I can share that later. I will pretend that you have a really good app. I believe you when you say your app is amazing, and we're going to go off of the assumption that the app is going to sell. So once someone sees it, they're going to download it. So how do we get the downloads? Secret number one. There are only 3 secrets, so this is really important. You have to engage your users when they need you most. And the reason for that is, someone needs something, you have the solution. They're a lot more likely to get that solution than when you randomly come up to them when they don't need you most and offer your solution. You can look at it as someone coming to you on the street and trying to sell you something that you don't need, versus you going to the store to get something that you do need. Who would you pay? So I'll repeat it, because even though this is super simple, a lot of people that I talk to kind of ignore this and they don't get it. And they say, oh, I'll just throw my money on Facebook ads and that's going to be fine. But no one is looking for what it is that you're giving them necessarily on Facebook. It could work. That's a whole different thing. But that's not really where they're looking for it. And that's why I included as secret 1.5. This is really the key. If you take one thing from this entire talk, please be this. Always make sure that you're at the right place at the right time. And this is something you can control. It's not luck. So we did this. And John, if you're watching this, please cover your eyes. I know how much you like this. It brings back memories. This is iDev 2011. We had developers in the crowd, and we actually engaged them where they needed us. This was kind of a fun PR stunt. It is not what I'm going to be talking about today. I just really wanted to show this picture because I think it makes sense. And I shared it on Slack yesterday. So I'm going to leave the slide intentionally blank. Let's clear that from our memories. And instead, let's talk about better ways to do promotion. I have 3 for you today. We're going to talk about App Store optimization. We're going to talk about Apple search ads. And we're going to talk about content marketing and SEO, something that I don't hear very often in relationship to apps. We'll start with App Store optimization. And before I dive into these, I just want to make sure everyone knows that I'm going to go through them fairly quickly. The idea is to put them at the top of your list of things that you can do, things that you probably have all the tools and all the knowledge to do, and the things that you can experiment with pretty quickly and pretty quickly see results. This is by no means an exhaustive list of the type of promotion ideas that you can use. And it's also not a super exhaustive list of the kind of ways to approach App Store optimization or any of the other ones. There are very good guides, some of which I've published and I will share at the end, that will allow you to do that. But these are the ones that I would look at. And these are the ones that I actually employ for us, for AppFigures as a company, and for anyone who asks me. So App Store optimization, again, a topic that deserves multiple sessions. But here are some of the basic concepts. So you get an idea of how to do it, how to approach it, and what to expect from it, and also what not to do. So for those of you who have not looked at App Store optimization, don't know what it is, it's simply a set of techniques to help Apple and Google search algorithms associate your app with specific keywords. And so remember how I said that you need to engage people where they need you? When they go into the App Store and they type in whatever feature they need, that's when they need you. They may not need you because the feature is not what your app provides, but they need something. Hopefully, if you pick the right keywords, which I will talk about in a second, you will be the relevant result. So you need to show Apple that your app can solve those particular problems, challenges, pain points, and then use that to gain downloads. So how do you do App Store optimization? I simplify the process as much as I could to save time and also not overwhelm you because there's a lot of stuff here. But one, you find those keywords that people are looking for. There are tools to do this. We provide quite a few of those. And so it's not really that difficult. If you know your app, you also know the kind of user that you have and what they expect, the type of features that make your app special. All of those are really good ideas for keywords. And then you run them through a report to see if they're popular enough. The ones that are, you take and you continue. And then you take those keywords and you use them in the app's name, in the subtitle, and in the keyword list. All of those are things that Apple gives you access to. So you can change the app's name with every update, the subtitle, and you have access to the keyword list that the algorithm uses under the hood. All those are accessible. And there are techniques very specifically to inject those keywords that you found in step number 1 and have them really push the app towards the right place in Apple's algorithm. And then you wait a little bit because these things take a while. 2 to 4 weeks is kind of a general expectation. And then you do it again. And by do it again, I don't mean you do it from scratch. I mean, you take everything you've learned and hopefully you've followed all those results over the 2 to 4 weeks of waiting. And what works, you take and you find similar keywords and use them. And what doesn't work, you throw away. That's as simple as I can put it. I have a few tips that I know are kind of pitfalls that people tend to either forget or not do. And one is not finding the right keywords. People tend to think that a keyword is good, just throw it into the app's name. That's not really necessary. If you spend just a tiny bit more time, and when I say a little bit more time, I don't mean days, I don't mean weeks. I mean maybe another 30 minutes on keyword research, you will find keywords that are much more appropriate for your app. And the more appropriate, the more results you're going to get. And by results, I mean downloads. So there is a direct relationship between how much time you spend researching and how many downloads you're going to get out of them. Unless you're really truly amazing and you can guess. And I don't think that's possible. The other thing is to target what's attainable. And by attainable, I mean something that you can rank in. With App Store optimization, getting into the keyword is one thing, but also getting ranked is another. And that is based on things like downloads and performance. So if your app is not getting as many downloads as you would like, look for keywords that don't require as many downloads to get into them. It's very cyclical. It's very you experiment and you see what works and what doesn't. And if you look for those keywords that are attainable, that you have the right number of downloads, you have the right rank, you have the right number of ratings, then you will get results. And again, results mean downloads. And as you get more downloads, you can target sexier keywords. As a very simple example, back to the photo editor, it's possible that a keyword like photo editor, and we saw that in the previous slide, requires a lot of downloads, hundreds of thousands of downloads to get into that top, whatever we're looking at, top 4, top 5. So you can find a keyword that is slightly less sexy, maybe editor for photos. I don't know, just off the top of my head. And that might be, because it's less popular, that also requires less downloads to get in. And so that's attainable for your app. Less sexy, but attainable. Go for the attainable. The last one, almost last one, is follow best practices. There are lists and lists and lists of best practices when it comes to App Store optimization. They're mostly good, mostly right. And by following them, you're really just helping yourself get to those downloads a little bit more quickly. There are best practices for how to optimize your keyword list. Things like removing plurals, things like removing spaces, removing duplication. They're really, really simple. They're really basic. And if you follow them, you'll get more success. You'll see more success more quicker. And the last one is do it. I know there are many developers who don't think that App Store optimization can help them, but it's an investment of a few hours. If you are not willing to put in a few hours to get more downloads, you may not get more downloads. I think that's as simple as it is. Doing it is really simple to get started. Sure, it can get complicated, just like programming, basically, but it's worth the time. Now, what not to do? I heard the term voodoo magic too many times over the last week, and so I had to put it here. App Store optimization is not voodoo magic. It's all, as a developer, you should get this. For those of you who program in the audience, as a non-developer, you should also get this, because this is very, very simple. And if you hung up around enough developers, you'll know that algorithms are just a bunch of ifs and else's. And so if you understand the algorithm, you understand how to give it what it wants. That's really App Store optimization. Don't half-ass it and then say it doesn't work. So many people have told me I made changes and nothing happened. Sure, that's possible. If you didn't follow my previous slide, then that's even likely. If you don't look for the right keywords, if you go after what's sexy, if you don't use the keywords properly, you're not going to see results. It's not magic. It's not voodoo magic, but it's also not regular magic. And so you have to put in the time to do it right. Don't skip keyword research. That goes directly into half-assing it. If you skip and just try to implement what you think is right, it's probably not going to work. Now, the difference here is an hour and a half. So if you spend the time to at least try, you're more likely to get real results. And lastly, don't forget to monitor the results, because if you make changes and they don't work, how would you know? When you monitor it, you know exactly what's working, what's not working. And so that's incredibly important. The second thing is Apple Search Ads. Apple Search Ads is very simple. It's that little sponsored box at the top of search results. So what App Store optimization tries to get to without having to pay per click, Apple Search Ads will give you when you pay per click, and will just happen overnight. No questions asked. It does cost money. And that's why you should be a little bit more critical of it. And if you don't have that much money to spend, maybe don't do that. But I've seen good results even with a small amount of money being spent on search ads. And when I say small, I mean $100 a month. I've seen even less, actually. And so sure, it's not going to get you millions of downloads, but it could kickstart something that, if your app is great, back to that slide from before, will give you that sort of organic lift. Because if you remember, more downloads means higher ranks for App Store optimization. So that's why I bundle this in. They work together. and they give you the results you want. And so if you have never tried Apple search ads, it's fairly similar to App Store optimization, just where you get to control what happens without doing any sort of real optimization. You find the search terms that you want to target. Now, here, sexy and attainable just mean expensive or inexpensive. The keywords that are sexy are probably going to cost you more per click or per tap. And so you'd move away from them, kind of a natural algorithm for selection, I guess, better than for App Store optimization. Once you have those, you'll create a campaign, and a campaign combines your app, a bunch of keywords, and one or more countries. Then, important, you will set the targeting. Targeting means who's going to see this. Is it going to be targeted by gender? Is it going to be targeted by age? Is it going to be targeted by one of the many other things that Apple lets you target by? I shouldn't say many. One of the other things that Apple lets you target by. And then you'll set the budget. Your budget can be as little as $100 a month. Sure, it's not going to get you billions of downloads, but it will get you in the right direction. And then, because money is on the table, you want to monitor that and make tweaks as they happen. So if you see that someone is clicking on a very expensive keyword again and again, but they're not actually ending up giving you money in the app, you may want to change that because they're probably downloading it by accident. Now, tips and tricks. I keep saying experiment, 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 because a lot of these things are specific to your app. There are many best practices that you can pick up and you can implement, some that are right here on the slide. But at the same time, because every app is just a little bit different, you might have to learn on your own. And I think that's okay. I prefer to do it that way where possible, because ultimately my app is unique and my audience sees it that way. And I want them to see it that way. And by experimenting, I make sure that I get to the best results for me. And that's really all that matters. Now, so that's the first star. The second one is search ads. If you have used it before, you know that it has several options of who to target. You can target new users. You can target, meaning someone who's never downloaded your app. You can target existing users, meaning someone who's downloaded your app and has your app on their device right now. Apple is Apple, so they know that. And they also have several other options. I think targeting existing users is always a mistake because they already have your app. Unless you have a very specific branding campaign, there's really no reason to do that. Now, I'm not sure if that's the default anymore. It used to be. And so you would just lose money because people who already know your app, or people who have your app on their device and go to the store, might click on it again. And when they click, even though they don't download, you still lose money. And so you don't really want to do that. And that's kind of the theme for a lot of these tips and tricks. Money can be lost so quickly with paid ads. And so you want to pay attention to what you're paying for. Now, the next one is kind of similar. Don't go global. Don't select a whole bunch of countries because it kind of makes sense. I want to be global. My app is available in all those app stores. Why not? And the reason is you don't know how well they will convert. If they see the ad and click on the ad, it doesn't mean they'll download the app. And so you want to make sure that you start small. Don't be afraid to start small. Just like the small budget that you can set to begin with, you can also start with just the US or just another country that your app might be localized into, or small enough and still speaks the language that your app is localized into, like Australia or New Zealand. I do a lot of campaigns in Australia. A lot of companies soft launch in Australia just to see what it would be like and see the kind of conversion that they can get. And that saves them money to begin with. So small budget, small country, that's perfect. Now, one thing that I've seen some success with is targeting returning users. I believe that's called returning users. Apple changes their category names from time to time. But that is users who have had your app. They downloaded it at some point in the past, had it on their device, deleted it from their device, no longer have it. And so you can get them back. You can recover them. And depending on how your app works and what the main purpose of it is, it's possible that getting them again will be easier than getting a new user. So you need to do less convincing. You need to do less selling. And you need to just remind them that you exist, be at the right place at the right time when they need it. And that is a good way to do that. Again, all these cost you a little bit of money. And so you have to be very careful with how you approach it. But I highly recommend at least trying it, even if it's with just a very tiny budget for a small amount of time. What not to do. Doing any of these things is just going to lose you money, in my opinion, and in my experience. So I would not do any of these. The first one is don't use search ads basic. I don't know why Apple created this. basic search ads are just like regular search ads without the targeting options. And so you tell Apple how much money you have to spend, which app you want to spend on, and kind of let loose. I think it's a pretty terrible system. I highly recommend not touching it. And if you are spending money on basic ads, please take that money and move it to advanced search ads. If you don't know how, ask me on Slack. I will gladly guide you through that. Now, the next is learn what the different targeting options mean. Apple doesn't have that many. They have enough that it's useful, but not that many that would be extremely complicated. And so I highly recommend taking the time to understand how those can impact who will see your ads. Ultimately, you want to get the right people who need your app at the right time. So if you keep that in mind, secret number one, this will apply here. Now, don't set it and forget it. You have to look at it. You have to monitor the results, and you have to make tweaks. It's your money is on the line, and you should consider it as such. Now, it might sound like, oh no, now a full-time job, I have to monitor my ads. No, not really. It takes an hour a day, 30 minutes a day, an hour every week. It's really the schedule that the time you have spend on doing that. That's really all there is to it. And the last one is, I say this about App Store optimization. I'm going to say this about search ads as well. Don't target competitor names. If someone is searching the App Store for a competitor by name, they're going to download that competitor by name. They're not going to touch your app. If maybe 1 in 100 touches your app, great, but it's going to cost you so much that it's not going to be worth it. I advise against it. I wouldn't do it. Not in your App Store optimization, not in your search ads. And so please don't do that. Last and not least, content marketing. Now, content marketing has been, if you've been in this world of digital for longer than the App Store, you'll know that content used to be king, still is king. Search engine optimization used to be big, still is big. Nothing changed. And I can tell you directly from experience, over the last year, I have developed no content marketing into 40,000, 45,000 people in a newsletter that love what I send. And that's been incredibly helpful to, one, educate our existing members on the kind of things that our platform can do, but also get new members into the platform. And I keep getting emails from people who are saying, I read your ASO teardown, and that's why I decided to sign up. Or I read your guide on screenshot optimization, and that's why I decided to start using your service and not a competitor. And that's the kind of thing you want for your app. You want them to go back into the store and search for it by name, and hopefully your competitor will lose money because they didn't see my slide on not targeting competitors by name. So what's content marketing? I'm assuming there is a big definition somewhere out there that I didn't look for, but the way I see it is you're creating written articles and or videos about a topic that's relevant both to your app and can actually help someone. So in a way, a guide about how to do App Store optimization is perfect. We provide tools for App Store optimization. You want help with App Store optimization. You look for help with App Store optimization. You find us. We provide the full package. Boom, boom. The how to do it, again, I tried to simplify as much as I could, but everything starts with identifying. And so you identify the topics that people care about. And you also find the topics you, as the person behind the app or the company, can talk about. Something that you have the authority to discuss, that you have the knowledge to discuss, the wisdom to share, and you put them together. That intersection is what you should be talking about. And then you put it together as a tutorial, a how-to, or a guide. Those are the ways I enjoy doing them. There are other ways, but those are the easiest for me. You publish it, and then you share it with the world, whether it's through a newsletter, by putting it on something like Medium that is more open, sharing it on Twitter, and actually asking people to retweet it and share it for you. Because if it is good content, there's no reason they wouldn't. If you're helping them, they would gladly help you back. A few tips and tricks. Chunk it up into small, digestible pieces. So don't throw too much information. As a developer myself, I like to think of everything. I want everything to be in the same guide. I kind of want the full picture, the step-by-step, the A to Z of everything. But that's not how people expect to get content. They expect to answer a very specific question. And when you do A to Zs, you normally don't answer a specific question. You answer all the questions. And so it's going to be either too overwhelming, no one's going to read it, no one's going to get the idea and click through to download your app, or they're going to read it and be overwhelmed with content and move on with life to find something that does help them. The bottom line, again, is help them. It's not about your app. It's not about selling it. It's about providing them with value. The next one, which might sound counterintuitive, is go in depth. The depth itself is not the problem. As long as you're focused, as long as you're answering a single question, the more details you provide that actually help answer the question, the better. And so you want to do more of that. I prefer personally to write casually, and I read casually too, meaning I don't like to read big, heavy papers. I don't like to read research papers, especially now when it comes to a simple question that I have. And so when I write, I do the same thing. Hopefully, those of you who read my stuff know that. Hopefully, you like it. Number one, and hopefully, it gives you enough value that you will continue to read more. And the last thing that I learned on my own is that you have to be consistent. If you do one guide once in a while, that's great. But if you do it every week, it actually builds momentum and people trust you more and see that you're more of an authority when you do it. So be consistent with your content. What not to do. Don't forget to share your content. I sometimes forget to share my content. And it's terrible because it's a missed opportunity, especially when I know that it solves a specific problem and helps a group of people. So always try to share it, even if you don't have a big following on Twitter, even if you don't have any very popular friends who can retweet your guide and get 1 million views. Go on Reddit, put it in the right place. No one's going to scold you for that. Make sure that it's out there, and that's how it all starts. Don't write about irrelevant or complicated topics. People only write about what will help people. Remember, back to secret number 1 is you want to get them where they need you. Don't write fluff because no one's going to read it. And if they do and they realize it's fluff, they're just not going to come back and read your stuff in the future. I personally hate fluff. I hate writing fluff. It just feels wrong. But I also hate reading fluff. It doesn't really serve any purpose. It doesn't provide me with value. It doesn't solve my problem. There's no reason I will continue from it. And lastly, I know I mentioned SEO and I didn't get into it too much because it's, again, a whole other thing. But don't write for Google. Don't write for the search engine. Don't obsess over keywords. Don't think about keyword density and having all the right images and making sure that the repetition is right. Because if you read online about SEO, that's what you're going to get. Write for people. Google's good at trying to figure that out. If in the future you need to optimize it, you can always go back and retouch it. That's not a big problem. So make sure that you write for people. Again, going back to always providing that value, right place, right time. Secret number 2 is promotion is a boolean. I know this sounds extremely simple and it kind of makes sense. Either you promote or you don't. If I ask you now if you're doing anything to promote your app and your answer is no, you're making a mistake. It's undeniable. That's just how it is. You can be doing a little bit. If I ask you if you're doing any sort of promotion and you say not enough, that might be true, but that's okay because you can do more as long as you do something. Now, some people, if I ask them if they're promoting their app, they'll say, hell yeah. And that's great. Even that can be taken to the next level. So there's always more that you can do, but as long as you do it, you'll be fine. And the reason is a whole bunch of other people are not going to do it. And so you're already ahead of the curve. And that's where you want to be. Secret number 3 is we decided to discount all of our services for iDev attendees for the rest of the year because we love iDev. iDev is a lot of fun. I'll share this in the Slack channel if anyone is interested with an actual link. And to wrap it all up, I know that I was very brief with everything that I talked about so far, just to, again, put this at the top of your list for things that you can actually do and benefit from. And if you want to learn more, either about about App Store optimization, about the industry in general, or see any of these different things, kind of a hands-on teardown, as I call them, the links are in there, and I will share those in Slack as well. There's a lot of very insightful stuff that you can learn from and actually get to see how it's done, with all the way from theory to implementation. And that's it. If you want more downloads, I gave you a few suggestions. I shared a few secrets. Now it's your turn. Go and do it. Ta-da.
Awesome. Thank you very much. I'll throw this up. There we go.
Alrighty. I stopped sharing.
Boom. There we all are. Sweet.
Most of us.
Slack was blowing up, so you have plenty of stuff to go read when you're done with this. But we can dive into the questions that I was capturing as we went, and then we can tackle more, or you can hit them up in Slack since we're at the end of the day.
Perfect.
First one up is what marketing tools would you use to get paying subscribers, since not everyone who downloads the app will subscribe?
Oh, that is a big question. I think engaging once they downloaded, again, a whole session in and of itself. But in my opinion, the easiest way, I don't think you need any marketing tools. Once you have the user, it's really all about how do you onboard them in a way that will explain the value. And then once they have the full value, then they will become subscribers, if I understood the question correctly.
Makes sense.
I will answer it again in Slack.
You can always go deeper.
Yeah, definitely.
So another question that someone had was, can you give us an example of a content marketing piece that you think is good, and then maybe even one that's bad?
I can share in Slack my most successful guide that I've written that has been super awesome, and that was actually about how to get featured on the App Store. It got so many views and so many questions and so many signups that I've been trying to replicate it ever since. Sadly, unsuccessfully, but I'm getting close.
Gotta chase that lightning. One other one, fairly probably an obvious answer, but maybe not, is that if two apps are paying for the same keyword, is it just a straight up price that Apple picks, or is there anything else that goes into it? Do you know?
It's a combination. So Apple, for search ads, they use a system where they claim the app that is more relevant will get the actual placement, and they do relevance based on App Store optimization. So again, the two are tied together. If you're not optimizing for any keyword, and let's say your app name is just your brand name, does not have a subtitle, you are more likely to not be seen in search ads and end up paying more, because Apple is not going to consider you relevant for most keywords.
Ah, good to know. Well, cool.
It's a vicious cycle.
What's that?
It's a vicious cycle between the two.
Ads for placement, placement to generate money for ads.
Yep.
All right, well, cool. There are currently no other questions, so we will let everyone go. I know it's been a long day for everyone. Thank you for hanging in there. It was an awesome day full of a ton of content.